When you're doing a project like this, the proof is in the practice. And this is why it's so important to have a proper design plan, to work through that plan, and to make adjustments along the way as we've discussed talking about this project. So that's a 58,000 pound tandem dump that came out here and dumped these loads. So this is about 6 inches of number 357 stone. It's not washed stone, it's just stone. It's kind of a road base, and it's now in place, ready to get leveled out. I'm Justin Hitt with Prosperity Homestead, and we're giving you an update on this barn project as we go forward and getting this farm operational. Now remember, when you're getting a farm operational, there's a lot of upfront costs that are better done the right way so that you can benefit from the rewards over time. So this is a gravel pad for a container barn, which we're going to share with you in details. We actually have a plan available for people who attend an earthworks class as a bonus. But the earthworks gives us an elevation. This pad gives us airflow and drainage. And that tandem dump truck came straight back here to dump it on site. Now there's a key thing that we talked about. And by the way, the driver said that Scott should be very proud of the job he did with such a tiny machine. But basically this was done with farm scale skid steer and excavator, and it's a very good job. Now that's time invested rather than being able just to blast it out, but essentially it also takes skill to make sure grade is good. Now we had a massive rainstorm just a few days ago, yet look at this ground. Now that 58,000 pounds in that dump truck has definitely compacted this soil and made it like concrete, but the truck was able to safely get back here and dump its load without any risk or any worry that it was going to get stuck. And you know those big old trucks, they don't have, they're lighter going out, but they don't have a lot of traction to them. And it still came in here and did what it needed to do. Another factor you may not recognize is there was enough room for a truck of that size to turn around. So that truck didn't go down in the bottom and turn around. It didn't drive around the circle like I thought it would. It actually just came in here, drove past the site a little bit, three-pointed right into the area that we're working on, and dumped its load. Now what it did was called spreading. It was able to spread the load as evenly as possible over the load. And we still have a little bit of soft area though, of course, because these rocks need to be spread out and tracked in. But look at that, there are barely any tire tracks from a 58,000 pound piece of equipment rolling out on top of this. Now there, again, the structure of the earthwork matters. We talk about that in a number of the other programs. But what we have here is a thick layer of a large 2-inch stone, unwashed, so there's a little bit of grit in it. It's okay. There's some smaller pieces in it. That's okay. But once the excavator comes in here tomorrow, we'll just roll this out and kind of get it level so that it'll be ready to receive containers. Now, we talk about a level platform from the beginning to the end, and we talk specifically that each phase of the implementation must be level. The truth of it is there are some adjustments you can make as you move forward, but if a certain phase is unlevel, so for example, the original bund that goes under this end, if that is unlevel and the cut is unlevel, then water will run off in the wrong direction rather than soaking and spreading. If the clay bund here is not compacted level, if we get a rain event, it'll pour over the backside. If the top of the platform is not level, then we have more of a grade adjustment on the gravel side. And then if the gravel's not level, the containers won't be level. And the containers, when we go to level them, will have to be on blocks in an unacceptable way. The point I'm making is that there are variances that are allowed to make this more feasible in the long run, but you do want to make sure that every implementation is the best implementation you can do. And evidence is showing that this is done very well. I'm not just saying that because I was involved in the project, but again, this is how you do this type of thing. Now, 6 inches thick of this rock plus the one load of number 57, which I verified with the driver should be sufficient. That one load of number 57 will lock these stones in place. It'll make a little bit less movement when you're walking around on them, but of course the rocks need to be leveled out before that. Now, what happens with these rocks? Why are we putting this road-based rock in the first place? Now, remember, this is not a home, and it will never be a home in the future, because if it was a home, we would use geotextile and moisture barrier and a lot of other stuff under these rocks. But these rocks being on top of the compacted clay gives us enough space to disperse water and then to evaporate it with enough airflow going through the rocks themselves. Over time, there'll be less and less airflow as the rocks lock together. Now, we haven't used compaction equipment like a vibrator or anything like that to compact this materials, because we don't want a solid pad. We want a pad that has some aeration so that we don't trap moisture up underneath the containers themselves. So the containers are not laying on this rock, they're laying on blocks that lay on top of this rock. These rocks themselves disperse the weight of equipment that may get parked in this barn, or the overall weight of the building once it's complete. Now, the building itself is not a residence, again, because there's going to be moisture coming up through the ground. It's going to be a barn with two sides to it. It's going to have an open front and back to allow airflow, and it's going to store things like hay, feed, tools, items like that. So again, it's not a residence, which is very important to point out. It's an agricultural building along the lines of a barn. So again, we're not going to put animals in here because the gravel would fill up with their feces and their urine, and it would just be a mess. We're essentially setting up what's called a dry storage location. So the one container is going to have tools and equipment that gets locked up. The other container will have feed and small items that we need to keep away from animals. And then the rest of this will essentially be parking a tractor or a truck, or parking something that needs to stay dry overnight. It might have us a little, we're going to put down some paver blocks in here and have a little like hangout location in the back of this, because it is kind of cool to sit back here in the shade and just look at the woods. And we were already talking about getting this all grassed out. But my point being is that this construction is suitable for its purpose, and not cheap by any means, but will be here for a long, long time. Now, these rocks over time will sink into the ground a little bit. The containers might need to be re-leveled, but when it comes time to put up the barn, it doesn't sit on these rocks. They'll actually have to bore out some pylons to put the uprights on, and then put a roof over top of it. It is essentially dry storage in a temperate climate. Like I said, we had 4 inches of rain in about an hour. Everything's dried up now because it's like 90 degrees outside, and these rocks are going to help us get that clean airflow. If we're going to store anything on top of these rocks, like straw or barrels with feed in it, for example, we need to put down a pallet so that everything's up off the ground. This is not designed to have things directly on top of these rocks, because again, there will be moisture coming up from the underground. And then of course, if there's radon or anything like that, it'll come up underground and dissipate because the building will be pretty airy. The last point I want to make is that anything that gets stored in here, whether it's stored in a container or it's stored inside of the open space in the center of the barn here, it needs to go in barrels. I fired up the riding lawnmower earlier to go do some mowing along the sides of the roads and stuff, and there were like 5 or 6 mice running out of it. We want to protect our feed and our tack or any equipment from mice, snakes, other things. So again, in the 16-foot span in the middle, we'll have a pallet laid down, and then we'll put barrels that we can seal with our bags of feed, with our different types of seed and materials that are going to be stored on the property. We have a central location for all that kind of stuff, which gives us access. As I've shown in the other videos, there's trails everywhere, but gives us access. And then of course you can park a side-by-side or a mini truck or anything on top of this gravel. Once it's been leveled out and tracked down, it'll be pretty solid, yet it'll still have enough airspace. So again, key thing is great plan, execute it well, gets you the outcome and results that you're looking for. And the evidence is in the practice, and the practice starts with education. If you'd like hands-on and practical education around earthworks, survival skills, homesteading skills, and the other practical activities necessary to run a small farm or a homestead, be sure to contact us at the website, www.prosperityhomestead.org, and we're going to connect you with the people that made this possible, as well as a farm that's in this area called the Sustainable Homestead Institute that has access to a network of professionals who can help with these kinds of projects. And in fact, it's what I've talked about before. When you start your small farm or a homestead, you need that community of professionals, and when you plug into the right people and you get the right education, you can manage these projects. My skill set is going to be managing land projects, help you get the planning, help you get the design, help you do the risk assessment and budgeting, and then I'm going to match you with other individuals that are in the region that we work for actual implementation. This is a skill set that once you learn, it will serve you for a lifetime on your small farm or your homestead. I'm Justin Hitt with Prosperity Homestead. And you can ask your questions at www.prosperityhomestead.org, where we help you make your dream a reality of a small farm or a homestead, growing your own food, having food security, physical security, and all those things that come with independent living and an outdoor lifestyle. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next podcast.